Hi everyone and welcome to my room. Hope you're doing well today. Today we're going to talk about why it's hard to be an INFJ in the personality community. So it's not quite the same topic as being an INFJ in the world, because obviously the world encompasses a lot more than just the personality community. If you're watching this video, you are by definition, even if it's in a loose way, in the personality community, and you are also in the world. But there are the vast majority, in fact, of INFJs. First of all, they're not aware that they're INFJs. So what that means is that being INFJ is not part of their self-descriptions and how they get on in the world. And they're likely or almost certainly not watching this video. In some sense, then, this video does not concern them. But that's not a huge issue, because suppose that you're an INFJ who's not in the personality community. If you're watching this video, you have effectively joined, again, even if it's in a loose way, the personality community, because now being INFJ is part of how you understand yourself, part of your self-description, even though it might not yet be something that is very central to your web of beliefs about yourself. It might be peripheral. It might in fact never become more than peripheral. It depends on what your own journey within the personality community will be like. But this will concern you. So in some sense, this video, insofar as it is being watched by you, does concern you. Okay, so we're talking about why it's hard to be an INFJ in the personality community. Another way that we can phrase this is that why it's hard to be an INFJ from the moment that you do identify as an INFJ. So if you like, there's two ways of looking at it. There's like the question why it's hard to be an INFJ in general, and why it's hard to be an INFJ as someone who knows they are INFJ. Because from the moment they know they are an INFJ, they are by implication part of a loose personality community with different levels of commitment. So if you understood that, let me just briefly mention that I have written this book on the INFJ, the Ecstatic Soul, which you can get below for less than $10 in ebook or paperback. So deepen your understanding. There's a new book that will be coming out in the coming months, which will be a sequel. So stay tuned. There's also The Infinite Castle, which I wrote as a novel. Main character is an INFJ, at least that's what people seem to be believing. So if you want an exploration of that, you can also have a look at that book. It's available at the links below, and you can support me on Patreon. The link is below. That really helps the channel. And you can support me from a very modest amount and get some access to, every couple of weeks, some bonus material as well. So win-win as far as I can see it. Now, why is it hard for an INFJ to be an INFJ? In other words, for an INFJ to be an INFJ in the personality community. I think it's a little bit difficult. But my aim would be to offer you an original understanding or an original perspective on why it's difficult. It's part of the reflections I've been having lately. I was happy that, my face looked as if I was semi-divine, because the sun is really hitting my face right now. I'll try to stick to it, but hopefully it won't be distracting to you. So, look, the personality community is a funny thing, because first of all, most people identify as N-types. That's not reflective of the broader world community, where we can safely assume and evidence suggests that the division between N and S is actually pretty equal. We're talking about 50-50. Whereas in the personality community, the difference is probably, the ratio is probably 75 N to 25 S. So there's a predominance of N, or at least people who identify as N, whose being N is part of their self-descriptions. Now, within this N community, you obviously have 8 types, right? You have 4 EN types and 4 IN types. I think that if you look at the case of the INFJ is a type. It's funny because INFJs online, they care a lot about relating to each other, right? And I want to emphasize this point because to some extent, you're always going to want to be looking to relate to people of your type. That's just a human need, it's a human craving. It's not a bad thing in itself, of course. But you will notice that INFJs are eager to relate to each other in a way that is more pronounced than the eagerness of INFPs to relate to each other, or INTPs or even INTJs to relate to each other. INTPs are going to be interested in other INTPs. Same for INTJs, same for INFPs, and you can apply that to the EN types as well. But this need to relate to people of your type seems to be most pronounced in the INFJs. I think one of the reasons is precisely that it is not easy to be an INFJ in the personality community. And a reflection of this is in the fact that when INFJs interact with people who are not of their type, right, that there are other types. Now, first of all, they will often be attracted to the prospect of interacting with IN types, introverted types, and often T types, just because INFPs, as they are, and I made a video about INFPs recently, they're quite self-contained people, and they don't seem to form into communities, sub-communities as naturally as some other types do. And for reasons that are either well-informed or not, INFJs tend to see INFPs as just not valuing the T function as much, and INFJs having a tertiary function that is a T function, often aspiring to develop it. It's in the nature of a T function, and they seek the company of other NT types. But the funny thing is that NT types, and more than just NT types in general, they tend to view INFJs as, there is this sense at least that INFJs get, that they're often not valued for what they deserve. They're often perceived, and this is the crucial point, as falling short in some way. So you'll often see that outside of communities of INFJs relating with INFJs, and truly also INFJs relating to ENFPs, because those two types seem to get on very well, and INFJs and INFPs to a degree, but to a lesser degree, you will see a lot of other types look at INFJs as if they are in some way a pale copy of what they are supposed to embody historically. And therefore, if you like, the threshold that's placed on an INFJ for not being called kind of dull or kind of mediocre is higher than for the other types. And I think that's what makes INFJs, that's what makes it difficult for INFJs to be INFJs in the personality community. It's as if you are an INFJ who stands out in general, you're seen as an exception to a broader rule that supposedly sees INFJs as kind of fading, as kind of not so interesting, not just in the world as a whole, but even within the personality community. So there's this interesting disconnect between how mythological the INFJ as an abstract concept is, and how everyday ordinary INFJs of flesh and blood are treated by the same people. My theory for this is that the INFJ as an abstract concept is viewed with a certain kind of awe and sometimes even envy, because the progenitor of the entire theory of types, the person, the scholar, in the absence of whom there just wouldn't be no theory of types as we know it, was Carl Jung. And Carl Jung is seen, whether rightly or wrongly, I think rightly, as an INFJ type, right? So we have the situation where the INFJ as an abstract category gets a huge amount of status and respect from the fact that Carl Jung was an INFJ. That's very, very influential on how the INFJ type, as in abstract terms, is going to be perceived. I think that then people, knowing this, move down to interacting with normal INFJs, and they don't find a Carl Jung among them, or very, very rarely. And I think that it's because of this disconnect between the idealized Carl Jung as an INFJ and your everyday INFJ that the threshold is placed so high on sort of deserving the epithet of being an interesting, insightful INFJ, and that when INFJs, everyday INFJs that just usually want to get on with their lives and find happiness and have interesting discussions, when they're encountered, there is this unconscious but all, unfair, all the same idea that they ought to be like Carl Jung. Right? In fact, I think that if you wanted to extend that, you could even extend that to Jesus, to the Prophet Muhammad, and other INFJs. It's almost as if INFJs are this category of, in general, not so exceptional people that occasionally produce this hyper-exceptional individual. And I think that everyday INFJs suffer from that. They suffer from that because they're not valued as much as they should, because they suffer from that comparison. I think in a future video, I want to look, if that's of interest to you, at the reasons why, the motivations for drawing this comparison in the first place, because I think there are roots here that are well worth investigating, and I also want to look at strategies that INFJs can embrace to redress the situation, to lead to a state of affairs that's more equal and beneficial to them. There's lots to say here, and there's lots to say, and that I in fact do articulate in my new book, but I want to make more videos on the topic. I'll stop here for now. Looking forward to your comments, and I'll see you at the weekend. Bye-bye.